нашим гостям. Они услышат это у себя в ушке. Если вы зададите вопрос как бы с места, я попытаюсь тоже перевести, вот, но лучше это делать в микрофон. Кто у нас будет давать микрофон, если будут вопросы? Дадим. По старой традиции, конечно, мы заняли все задние ряды. Если кто-то найдет в себе силы сесть вперед, это только приветствуется, потому что это создаст чуть более камерную атмосферу. Не стесняйтесь. Я сообщил нашим гостям сегодня, что у нас в зале как и начинающие менеджеры, студенты, представители Министерства культуры, представители высших учебных заведений профессиональных, гости, журналисты, артисты, дирижеры. Приятно видеть такой разнообразный состав. Поэтому я предлагаю начать. Я хотел бы поблагодарить за организацию этого мероприятия Анастасию Евгеньевну Тюкову, директора Красноярского академического симфонического оркестра, которая в очень сжатые сроки позволила нам организовать все на очень высоком уровне. Анастасия Евгеньевна, я хотел бы дать вам микрофон, чтобы представили наших гостей и официально открыли этот замечательный вечер. Ничего страшного, можно тихо говорить.
Добрый день всем. Мы рады вас приветствовать на нашей такой дружеской конференции. Со своей стороны хочу сказать, что этот проект проходит в рамках поддержки Министерства культуры Российской Федерации, Министерства культуры Красноярского края и, конечно, Краевой филармонии. Мы рады, что к нам приехали замечательные гости. Я, позвольте, представлю. Начну с дамы Кэтрин Олридж, музыкант, просветитель. Гости все из Великобритании, добрые наши друзья, замечательный профессионал, человек, интеллектуал Ник Винтер. Ник представляет в этом году, является консультантом межправительственной программы 2 стран, консультантом классической программы года Великобритания в России и Россия в Великобритании года музыки. Спасибо. И Гэвин Рид. Гэвин является председателем Ассоциации британских симфонических оркестров, шотландский камерный оркестр. Спасибо. Welcome.
Да, я думаю, что мы перейдем вам слово.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting us to come here this morning, Evgeny. It's great to be in Krasnoyarsk. I hope that throughout the next half an hour or so, you'll be able to understand my accent and what we have to say. But if there's any problems, then please let me know. So, great pleasure to be here. I'm going to explore a little bit this morning the changing, developing roles of orchestras, their musicians, concert halls and festivals in the UK as musicians and organisations, managers like me, ever seek new and exciting and innovative ways of connecting with more and more people. It's a pretty big topic for a fairly short amount of time, but I hope that over the course of the next half an hour I'll give you a sense of the commitment and the reach and the impact of our collective work in the UK. So, currently, I've got 3 different roles. First, I'm the Chief Executive of the Scottish Chamber Orchestra. It's one of Scotland's 5 national performing companies, and we are funded directly by the Scottish Government. And I have to say, as Chief Executive of the SCO, particularly pleased to be in Russia now, because we have just appointed the quite brilliant Maxim Emelianichev, a young Russian musician, to be our new principal conductor. So for the next, hopefully, many years, Maxim is going to be working in the UK, in Scotland, touring internationally, recording with the Scottish Chamber Orchestra. His first concerts as principal conductor are next month. And here is a little film, short film of Maxim rehearsing Haydn's The Seasons in Edinburgh last year.
to get to orchestra and to public some electricity in the air. Technique is okay, balance was built in acoustic rehearsal, collaboration between musicians is good, but moment of the concerts is something special. This is for what we rehearse, for what we live, actually.
And we've just brought out first recording with Maxim Schubert's Ninth Symphony, which hits the shops next month. Now, second role at the moment is I'm a trustee on the board of directors of an organisation called Impact Scotland, International Music and Performing Arts Charitable Trust, an organisation that was specifically created to build and develop and ultimately run a new concert hall in Edinburgh, the very first purpose-built performance venue in Scotland's capital city for over 100 years. And it will be our new home. It will be the Scottish Chamber Orchestra's new home, and it will completely transform the relationship that the orchestra and our musicians have with the people of Edinburgh and the surrounding region, and hopefully inspire and connect with many, many more people. The new build is behind there's an old magnificent mansion house there, and behind that we will have this rather splendid auditorium at its heart. Of course, with excellent acoustics, designed by Nagata of Japan, the wonderful Dr. Toyota. Excellent sight lines, comfortable seats. You kind of take that for granted nowadays in new concert halls. But it's a World Heritage Site. It's in one of the most recognisable and complicated historic sites in Scotland. But the great innovation of this place is going to be its foyer. Too many concert halls, certainly in the UK, open their doors just before a concert starts and shut their doors pretty much as soon as the concert is finished. This place, known as the Dunard Centre after our benefactor, will be open all day long. It will be welcoming, it will be full of all kinds of music, we hope, and bustling with activity, and it will create a new city centre destination. It may or may not sound innovative to you. In the UK, it is a significant innovation. There is nothing in Edinburgh quite like this. Somewhere for people who might well walk straight past the front door, somewhere to meet friends, bump into musicians, bump into all sorts of genres of music, and discover performances, workshops, activities, where otherwise people will be walking past a closed door. So, for the Scottish Chamber Orchestra, it's a big deal. And like all of the UK's publicly funded orchestras and ensembles now, we work regularly in schools, in universities, in colleges, in hospitals, in care homes, in community centres, through our creative learning programme. And each year we work with over 10,000 people in a variety of different settings. Over four main areas of activity. Education projects for schools, universities and colleges, which provides hands-on training for emerging composers, performers and workshop leaders. We've got an ensemble programme, particularly a new SCO Youth Academy for a free series of workshops, training opportunities, concerts, performance opportunities for young, talented musicians. We also work with amateur musicians. I don't know how this will translate, but we call it scrapers and tutors, for amateur musicians who are not necessarily very good, but they love making music. So they have a go and they love working with our professional musicians. We have lots of family events for babies, toddlers and their adults. And finally, what is increasingly a growing area of our work for all of us is working in the health sector. So we're at the forefront of arts organisations in Scotland, offering high-quality social prescribing projects that really do make a difference. For example, working closely with the University of Edinburgh and the National Health Service, our publicly funded health service, for people working with patients who have dementia. This is what a National Health Service staff member had to say earlier this year. Not my words, an NHS staff member, I saw some of the men who don't ever get involved in anything dancing with members of the orchestra. It was great to see, really, really great to see. All the staff were smiling, all the patients were smiling, everybody was so happy, and it's not very often you see that. We have a long-term community residency based in one of Edinburgh's most disadvantaged areas, using all of our 4 strands of creative learning programme. One of those participants who we worked with earlier this year said, "This is one of the most exciting things I've ever been involved in, and we've all been treated like VIPs throughout. I've loved taking part. The Scottish Chamber Orchestra's project brought new eyes to my neighbourhood for me, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I used to be quite ashamed to live here. How that has changed after working with such a wonderful bunch." Now that's powerful stuff, and I know that Kath will have similar stories. That is the power of what we're doing. Here's a short film about our work. You may have just seen at the end there, all of our concerts now are free for under 18s. So that's an initiative I'm particularly proud of, that all of our concerts throughout the year, anybody under 18 comes for free. And we are starting to see a change in the demographic and the makeup of our audience. Now, my third role is I'm currently chair of the Association of British Orchestras, the ABO, a membership organisation representing the interests of all of the UK's professional orchestras. We've currently got 66 full members, large and small. I hope this slide will work. Each one demonstrating an extraordinary range of different styles, different sizes, different profile of organisations. Members range from the internationally renowned City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra in Halle, to the 5 orchestras that are maintained by the BBC throughout the country, the opera and ballet companies, Royal Opera House, Opera North, English National Opera, Glyndebourne. We've got the London orchestras, the London Symphony Orchestra, the Philharmonia, etc. A whole load of chamber orchestras, so the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment, my own orchestra, the Academy of St Martin in the Field, and a whole range of other groups. And together they show a sector that I think is committed both to its local communities and international in outlook. One of the things that we tend to suffer from is a public perception that we are a little stuffy, don't innovate particularly, don't move forward. And I think the membership is rather good at showing that that is not entirely the case. Many of our symphony orchestras were established in the 19th and early 20th century as symbols of Victorian and Edwardian civilization. And that's the London Symphony Orchestra in its early days. Lots of men, not too many women. Thankfully that's changed. The creation of the London Mozart Players in 1949 launched a wave of revolutionary chamber orchestras throughout the 50s and 60s, all of whom added to the great work of the larger orchestras and created an awful lot more work for the ever-increasing pool of well-trained musicians. And there was a second wave of innovation in the 1970s and 80s, which saw further revolution in the form of period instruments and authenticity, historically informed performance practice, and at the same time, cutting-edge contemporary music groups. And most recently, we've seen several new ensembles with a particular focus on diversity and inclusion, such as this one, Chineke, established in 2015 to be a catalyst for change by increasing the representation of black and minority ethnic musicians in British and European orchestras. And the British Para Orchestra, as far as we know, the world's only large-scale ensemble for professional disabled musicians. The Para Orchestra's mission is simply to redefine what an orchestra can be. And next year it will become resident in the newly refurbished Colston Hall in the city of Bristol in the southwest of England. And here they are, that one, here they are in the hall in 2018, taking part in the Bristol New Music Festival, performing an installation called Anatomy of an Orchestra. Part concert, part installation, providing an incredible opportunity for the audience literally to climb inside the orchestra and immerse themselves in the mechanisms of orchestras and explore what's going on. The current £48 million transformation of Colston Hall, originally built in 1867, will not only create another world-class orchestral concert venue, but crucially a new education centre. And they have the lofty aim, the ambition of being the UK's most inclusive concert hall, uniting everyone across the city and beyond, regardless of age, race, ability or background, through the brilliance of live music. And inclusion is at the heart of a truly remarkable change project which the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, another of Colston Hall's resident ensembles, embarked upon a couple of years ago. And their aim was to make their entire organisation, the whole of the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, the board of directors, the management, top to bottom of the management, and the entire orchestra of musicians, much more accessible and inclusive. The project was called the BSO, Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, Changemakers. And they responded to the realisation, the stark realisation that disabled people who make up 1/5 of the entire UK population are woefully, considerably, terribly underrepresented in the arts workforce. And the programme included 3 main activities: training for a disabled conductor, this is James, to accelerate his development and his experience and his confidence as an artist. The creation of BSO Resound, a disabled-led ensemble, created and directed by the same conductor, giving public performances, and an ongoing series of organisational change activities, including training for the entire staff to embed accessibility and disability awareness throughout the organisation. And they are an absolute trailblazer, and they're a model for best practice that many of us in the UK and increasingly abroad are taking a very close look at. Now, I'm very proud that the ABO, the Association of British Orchestras, has recently added higher education, music colleges and conservatoires, youth orchestras, youth ensembles and training to their membership, crucially establishing a vital link with the training profession for future generations of musicians, and equally importantly, informing current and emerging professional practice, curriculum development and innovation in teaching and learning. In other words, helping to create the musicians of tomorrow. Orchestras still give concerts in concert halls, of course, and professional musicians still pass on their experience and their knowledge in the traditional teacher-pupil way. But now student training across the UK includes study options in all of the areas that I've been discussing. So here we have 2 senior students from the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland in Glasgow, with children from a local primary school in one of Glasgow's most disadvantaged communities. This was a project called Baby Strings, where the musicians visited the school to inspire young children to take up string instruments. I think the looks on the children's faces tells you all you need to know about the success and the enthusiasm of that particular project. Now, one of my first professional experiences as a trumpet player was playing with the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, Cath's orchestra, as you'll discover shortly, in the opening concert of Symphony Hall in Birmingham with their then music director, Simon, now Sir Simon Rattle. I was playing 6th offstage trumpet in Mahler 2, and very proud of it I was as well. It was an incredible experience, regarded by many as perhaps the finest concert hall in the UK, if not further afield. The Symphony Hall is a very visible symbol of the extraordinary post-industrial regeneration that Birmingham has gone through over the last 30 years or so, and actually is still going through now. As Kath will tell you better than me, the centre of Birmingham is a building site as a new tram system is being put in to increase transport links and accessibility into the city. But the CBSO, the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, has been at the forefront of redefining the role of the modern orchestra in our society for years, and so much so that they've actually now, they're working in partnership with an education trust and a schools provider in England to create the first music school, specialist music school, in collaboration with an orchestra. It's a radical new approach to music education, innovatively addressing the much publicised and very worrying decline in the creative arts and specifically music education in many of our schools. It will be non-selective, anybody can come, it'll be non-fee paying, it'll be free, it'll be a specialist music school drawing on students from right across an area in the West Midlands of England called Sandwell, which is again one of the poorest, most deprived local authorities in the country. Every child gets an opportunity to play an instrument, participate in choirs and ensembles, as well as getting to know the CBSO, meeting the orchestra, coming to concerts, listening to presentations, getting to know musicians like Kath. It's a fantastic new initiative which, if successful, and it has a lot of funding from central UK government, so it has every chance of succeeding, I'm sure it's a model that will be taken up by others. And so the CBSO is finally proving something that we've all known for a very long time, that the benefits of regular participation and involvement in an immersion in music making can and does have a profound impact, not only on individuals' all-round education, but on the society that they create, the society that they live in. They become proactive citizens. Now, you may be familiar with El Sistema in Venezuela, a long-standing social transformation program which uses orchestral music not only to turn traditional music teaching on its head, but to change countless, hundreds of thousands of people's lives now over the last 35 years. And it has inspired many similar projects all around the world. Its most famous graduate is the conductor Gustavo Dudamel, now the music director of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And inspired by El Sistema, we have Sistema Scotland, which works to transform lives through music, targeting again some of Scotland's most disadvantaged communities with its Big Noise programme. And the first Big Noise programme was established in the Scottish town of Stirling in an area called Raploch. And it began in 2008 with 6 musicians supporting 35 school children. And now there are 4 Big Noise centres around Scotland, with over 2,800 children working 4 or 5 days every single week. And I'd like to share with you the words of Maggie. Maggie is a lifelong resident of the Raploch and a parent of 3 children who take part in the Big Noise programme. This is what Maggie had to say. I've lived in the Raploch all my life. Growing up there wasn't easy. It was challenging because of the terrible reputation it had with lots of drink, drugs and crime, which was a way of life. In high school, I was told from teachers there was no point in me going to school, as I was from the Raploch, and would amount to nothing. But now, it's a different place. At parents' evenings, teachers tell me they can tell which children from the Raploch go to Big Noise from the discipline, the concentration, and the behaviour in class. The council, the local authority, started a regeneration project to build new houses, to make it a more appealing place to live. But the real regeneration began when Sistema started Big Noise. It has brought a broken community together and put pride and hope in us all. It's a place I'm proud to say I live. Pretty powerful words. A similar ethos is embedded in 6 community-based music and social regeneration projects in England known collectively as In Harmony. And in Liverpool, this is the Liverpool Philharmonic Hall, the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra leads one of them. And they work with 4 schools and 2 urban communities where over 40% of children live in poverty. And like Systema Scotland, In Harmony Liverpool has been the subject of a long-term, longitudinal research study to assess impact on music education and social outcomes, and is consistently shown to have improved the life chances of children and young people with outcomes including increased confidence, well-being skills and resilience, positively impacted on families and family life, positively impacted on the culture and learning environment of the participating schools, and helped build stronger communities, generating civic pride. And Liverpool and Birmingham are only 2 of our cities in the UK which are successfully reinventing themselves after decades and decades of post-industrial decline by harnessing the potential of the creative industries. And in Manchester and Gateshead is the neighbour of the rather better-known Newcastle in the north of England, visionary and courageous local authority and artistic leaders have produced not only 2 great concert halls, but perhaps more importantly, a legacy of cultural learning and participation. So the Halley Orchestra has got a very long-standing and distinguished history in Manchester, going back to 1858. Its main home is the Bridgewater Hall. This isn't the Bridgewater Hall. A lovely 2,500 seat concert hall opened in 2006, yet again a very powerful symbol of that cultural regeneration. But here is St. Peter's, the conversion of a deconsecrated church. Again, there's a theme here emerging, a very disadvantaged area of Manchester, this time called Ancoats, which fell into heavy decline throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. And this is now their new permanent rehearsal space and a base for their various ensembles, including adult, youth and children's choirs. It's also become an incredibly important resource for the Ancoats community. And thanks largely to the Halley and this development, Ancoats is now becoming a vibrant, increasingly attractive neighbourhood with a thriving arts and community scene. You may be familiar with this rather iconic image of Sage Gateshead, become one of the best known concert halls in Europe. Home to the Royal Northern Sinfonia, which is the UK's only full-time salaried chamber orchestra. The conductor Lauren Mazel described it as one of the 5 best concert halls in the world. That's great, that's wonderful. Great acoustics, great facilities. But more importantly, and why it's become such a trailblazer, is that it was designed as much as a music education centre as a performance venue, and it has created a beacon of excellence serving the whole of the northeast of England. Overnight, Gateshead, there it is, Newcastle on the right, Gateshead on the left, the River Tyne in the middle. Really crucial that it's on the left-hand side, which before Sage Gateshead was just a wasteland. There was nothing there. Overnight, Gateshead joined the global musical touring map and quickly developed an international reputation for its learning and its participation programme. But it's the pride that is now felt by the local and regional community. So this is truly an international venue, making a material change to the lives of people in an area of the UK which was in very grave danger of being left behind. The UK is home to many festivals. Some big, some smaller. We've got the splendour at the large end of the BBC Proms, often described proudly by us Brits as the largest classical music festival in the world. I'll leave you to decide whether that's true or not. And we have the Edinburgh International Festival. And in 2018, marking the centenary of the end of World War I, both festivals commissioned a Scottish composer, Anna Meredith, to create a work called 5 Telegrams, inspired by the very harsh telegrams that servicemen were permitted to send to their loved ones during the war. It was a free outdoor event involving live symphony orchestra and live digital art. Here is the the event taking place in Edinburgh. That's the Usher Hall in Edinburgh, the other main concert hall in Edinburgh. A few weeks later, it took place at the Royal Albert Hall in London, the home of the BBC Proms. Both events attracted audiences in their thousands. And this is the closing event of the Edinburgh International Festival. Just one of 11 festivals hosted by Scotland's capital city each year, collectively generating audiences of more than 4.5 million people, which puts them on a par with a FIFA World Cup, generating a benefit to the Scottish economy of over £300 million a year. So this is the closing concert, fireworks concert. That's my orchestra down at the bottom, underneath Edinburgh Castle, which you can perhaps just make out behind the fireworks. And we've given that concert now for 37 years running, each year to an estimated audience around the region of 250,000 people. So public engagement on a fairly grand scale. And there are many other smaller festivals, but no less important around the country, and several of them established by leading composers with very strong ties to their local communities. Benjamin Britten created the Aldeburgh Festival in the 1960s on the site of a disused grain maltings factory. He was very much a composer of place, with a fundamental commitment to writing music for and with his local community in mind. Here we have the conductor, you can just see at the back there, the conductor, composer Thomas Adesh, conducting the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, surrounded by locals, not in a concert hall, but in a marquee in Aldeburgh. And this is Sir James Macmillan, Scotland, perhaps Britain's most successful living composer. He founded the Cumnock Tryst. Tryst is an old Scots word, and it means a meeting place or a romantic rendezvous. And set in the small working-class mining town of Cumnock in the west of Scotland, where Sir James grew up, it's exactly that. Somewhere for music lovers to meet each other, soloists, ensembles, a long way from the traditional city centre concert halls. And here is Sir James, Jimmy, as we know him, conducting the world premiere of one of his own works, All the Hills and Vales Along, last year. It's scored for brass band, in this case, the local community brass band, chorus, strings, and a solo baritone. Following this community world premiere, he then took it to London, to the Barbican Centre, one of our glitzy, glorious concert halls in the UK's capital city, with the London Symphony Orchestra, one of the country's top brass bands, great singer, but he performed it first in his local community. And that is yet another of our local festivals in a little corner of Scotland called the East Neuk of Fife. And again, it's an old mining community, and up there with the brass trumpet is John Wallace, celebrated trumpeter, used to, for many years, principal trumpet in the Philharmonia Orchestra in London. Then he became the principal of the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, taking a self-made project back to his own community, again celebrating the mining community of Cumnock through the power of music. Irritatingly, just to finish, accusations of elitism and relevance, or rather the perceived lack of it, are never far away in our business. However hard UK orchestras try, and believe me, we try very, very hard, there remains a public image problem. A perception that what we do is for the wealthy, for the middle class, and for the privileged. Reality couldn't be further from the truth, as story after story after story about audience growth, access and inclusion, clever use of technology, and innovative programming and presentation proves. However, all perceptions are a little hard to shift, and despite the term elitism being used very favourably in sport, it is for some reason still regarded as a taboo when it comes to the arts in our country. And every orchestra in the UK tells its own stories about reaching new people, engaging and inspiring them, and introducing them to the glories of music making. But it's not new. It's not new at all. This is the Scottish Chamber Orchestra, performing in the streets of the Kyle of Loch Alsh, a beautiful little village in the Highlands of Scotland in the 1980s. In fact, the SCO has just completed its 41st consecutive annual tour of towns and villages across the length and breadth of Scotland, playing in numerous, sometimes absolutely tiny, community centres for people who would otherwise have no opportunity to hear live music. So I hope that's given you a little snapshot of the orchestral world in the UK. In a second, Kath is going to go into some more detail from the musician's point of view, but I'd like to end with a very personal story about my time as a musician, which in many ways has summed up and informed my own journey. In the 1990s, I took part as a trumpet player in a music, drama and dance project which was being organised by the Halley Orchestra. After several weeks of workshops and creative music making and sharing with adults who had special needs, of a variety of physical and mental special needs, we all came together in a large leisure centre to share all the work. We had a musician, we had a dancer, we had an actor in each of 6 different centres. We all came together in front of all of their friends and family in a large leisure centre. And after one bit of the performance, we were all getting ourselves together for the next stage, and we were suddenly aware of a lady, a middle-aged lady, who was quietly shuffling onto the centre of the stage. She had her carer with her, and she had a microphone in her hand, and she suddenly started to sing a song on her own. And it was beautiful, and we discovered later utterly heart-wrenching, because it turns out that the lady had been taken into care several years earlier following an abusive marriage, and in all the time that she'd been in care, she hadn't uttered a single word. And this project, through the music, had helped her to find her voice. That's why we do what we do. Thank you.
Если вы позволите, Гевин, спасибо вам большое за выступление, но только не уходите далеко. Я думаю, что у нас есть ряд вопросов к вам. May you put a